Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is Daniel Midson-Short. This is Self Improvement Saturday, episode number 14. 2 full weeks worth of Self Improvement Saturday episodes for your viewing and listening pleasure or displeasure. Maybe it really annoys you. I don't know. But if you're here, I'm guessing that it's something that's useful for you. And I really appreciate those who are tuning in every week. Good to see you all. Today, I wanted to do something slightly different than I've done in episodes past, which is I want to talk specifically about some lessons that I have learned from one of my very early mentors in life. And this is an episode that I've been thinking about doing for several weeks, but it hasn't really had the right timing. And I thought this is a good week to do it. So I'm going to talk through some of the life lessons that I have learned from Earl Nightingale. And for those of you who don't know who Earl Nightingale is, this will probably seem very random and pointless. For those of you who might have heard from him, this will probably be a refresher. And hopefully for some of you, I'll be able to introduce you to his ideas and encourage you to read and listen to some of his material as well, because it's profoundly affected my life, and hopefully it has for you as well. As always, we are live on YouTube as well as on Instagram. So hello to both of you. Great to have you here. And I'm excited to be here. This is a show we do every week. And yeah, we go for about half an hour and just talk about self-improvement ideas. It's getting chilly here in California. I've got my coffee. So it's good to be here with you all. And I'm excited to talk through this topic. All right. Life lessons from Earl Nightingale. First of all, who is Earl Nightingale? So he was, first of all, a radio personality in the 1940s and 50s in the United States. And he began his career wanting to work for CBS in Chicago. That was his life dream. He grew up in a very poor area in Long Beach, California, actually, and he wanted to become a radio announcer. Of course, nobody he knew did that. Nobody had any advice for him. He just basically had to figure it out for himself. There was no internet back then, but he made his way through local radio stations, learned how to be a DJ and read ads and do all those things, and slowly built his way up to being a very high-level radio personality. Because of that, he has an incredible rich voice that I would encourage you to listen to when you have some time. It's quite mesmerizing when you listen to it for a while. But in the background, behind his career as a radio announcer, he always had a passion for personal development. And he spent the first part of his life really searching for what he called the secret of success. He had this question that was burning in his mind from the age of about 14, he said, up until the age, I think, of 25 is when he started to figure it out. And the question was, why are some people more successful than others? Why do they succeed despite all the challenges and setbacks that they face, whereas other people just kind of fade and dwindle in life and don't do very well? And this is something that he sought the answer to through reading, through trying to meet different people, and slowly he figured it out for himself. And as a result of that, he shared that idea, which I'm going to share with you later, in a recording to a company that he was working with. And it became a record, an actual vinyl record that sold over, I believe, 100,000 copies. It became the first spoken word gold record in the world. And that's significant back then because it grew by word of mouth. It was basically people would hear it, would think it was profound, and then share it with someone else and then order a copy. And it grew to 100,000 copies, which is amazing. So you can imagine back then, this was a very pioneering idea. What I'm doing here today is pretty common. There's a lot of people out there sharing ideas around self-improvement, personal development, and trying to live a better life. But he was he was the first one. He was one of the pioneers out there. There were people before him, obviously, but he was one of the first ones, especially to do it in a audio format, because most people had written books before then. So he was really, for me, the first person who I listened to in this respect. My connection to him came through a cassette tape set, which I actually have right here, which I'll do a little show and tell for you. This is Lead the Field, if you can see that there. It's a cassette tape program that was actually at my grandmother's house when I was 14 years old. And I used to listen to it in my Sony Walkman. For those of you who remember what that is, it's a cassette version of the iPod. And I would pop those tapes in and I would listen to it. She had that cassette tape. Someone gave it to her years and years before, and she had listened to it, really liked it. And I decided to listen to it at the age of 14. And I was really enamored with this man, this sort of mentor who I'd never met and never would meet because he'd already passed away. And I learned all these incredible life lessons from him. So that's the reason that I wanted to share them in this video today. And hopefully they will be of use to you as well. I have 4 different things that I want to talk about that I think have got profound truth in them and can really impact your life if you take these on in your own way. And these are life lessons from Earl Nightingale. So I'm going to go through them and hopefully they're useful for you. Idea number 1 that I learned from Earl Nightingale, which is a huge mental shift, is that success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal. This statement, when you think about it, is probably the biggest mental trap avoider. I don't know how to say that in a better way. Mental model, if you want to say, that you can use to make you feel better as you're progressing towards your goals in life. Let me explain. Most of us tend to think about success as something that will happen once we get there, once we achieve a certain amount of money, or we meet the right partner in life, or we weigh a certain amount, or we achieve a certain goal in our lives. And we believe that until we reach that success, we are not a success ourselves. But what Earl Nightingale really discovered was that success is the progressive realization of the goal, meaning that if you are on the path to actually achieving that, you're working towards it, you're learning, you're growing, you're developing, then you are a success already. And this is a significant thing to think about because whatever you're doing in your life, you probably are making progress. Maybe it's very slow. Maybe you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. I've done that a lot of the time. But if you are progressively realizing a goal, you're making effort day by day, week by week, year by year, you are already a success. So in that instance, me doing this show every week or every couple of weeks, I am progressively realizing my goal of moving towards 1 million subscribers as a YouTube, whatever you want to say, influencer, speaker, idea sharer. And if I can reach my goal over my lifetime, that's great. But really, the success is already happening because I'm progressively realizing that goal by doing this consistently, by learning, by sharing ideas. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal. So whatever you are trying to do in your life, if you stick at it and you keep persisting and you keep moving forward slowly towards it, you are already a success. Big mental model shift to think about. And so for me, that has been significant because it's stopped me from feeling bad if I don't achieve something immediately. If I fall backwards a little bit in my life, I've realized that, hey, this is how it goes. You progressively realize what you want to do in your life. So that's idea number 1 that I learned from Earl Nightingale. Number 2 is the idea of service and rewards. And Earl Nightingale always shared this idea of an apothecary scale, which is one of those scales that you measure things on. The old school one side goes up, the other side goes down, and they have to balance out. So he always shared the idea that on one side is your service that you give to the world, and on the other side are the rewards that you get. I'm looking down here sometimes at Instagram as well as up here, but you get the idea. Service and rewards. On one side is what you give to the world. On the other side is the rewards that you get as a result. Very often we forget at times that it's our service, it's our efforts, it's our contribution that creates the rewards that we have in life. Earl Nightingale has this great this metaphor that he uses in a lot of his different recordings where he says, most people are like a person sitting in front of a fireplace and they're saying, give me some heat and then I'll put in some wood. And the reality is that unless you put some wood in there first, unless you fill the fire full of fuel, it's not going to burn. It's not going to create any heat. And that's really the trap sometimes, is that we think that we should get the reward without having to serve. And so that idea of service and rewards is a really significant one that I've kept in mind. Am I truly serving the people in my life, whether they're customers, whether they're family members? Am I giving what I can to them? As a result, am I getting the rewards I want? And what he says is, if you are unsatisfied with the rewards that you have in your life, in whatever respect that is, whether it is financial, personal, whatever, Look at your service. Are you actually giving enough to the world? And are you contributing in a way that makes a difference? Very often, if we go out to work for a company or we get a job or something like that, we think, well, I should just get a paycheck. But the truth is, you have to give just as much value in service to receive that reward. And sometimes we fall into the trap of thinking it should just come naturally. But the truth is, we have to keep thinking about what are we doing? How are we serving? The highest paid and the highest rewarded people in the world give the very best service. And that doesn't just mean customer service, it means in everything they do, the way they come across, the way they treat people, their knowledge, their experience. It is the very best in the world. And that is why they are rewarded, paid the most, respected the most, whatever it is. So, service and rewards, significant idea, and one that I've really leaned into a lot of times in my career, especially when I've been frustrated with my results, is to think about, well, what service am I giving to the world? Idea number 3, which is one that really helped me through my teenage years and into my early adulthood, is this idea of following the follower. Earl Nightingale has this amazing audio program and it's called "It's Easier to Win," and it's part of Lead the Field. So if you get a chance to look it up online, and it's about following followers instead of following leaders. Very often in life, we grow up in a circumstance where we don't choose it. We don't choose our family. We don't choose where we are born. We don't choose our first environment, but we start to fall into the trap of thinking that that is how the world works. We look at the people around us and they're very convincing because we love them, we trust them, we think they must have it all figured out, and we start following them. What Earl Nightingale says is that actually what we are doing, we're not following leaders in the world, we're following followers. And it's kind of like a procession of caterpillars that one's following the tail of the other one, and they eventually are just going around and around in a circle. Very often, this is the case in certain communities, certain lifestyles, ways of thinking. People just live at a certain level and they don't grow any higher because they're just following the example and the ideas and the lessons of the people who they grew up with. And so, what Earl Nightingale says is to ask yourself, look at the people around you and ask yourself, do I really want to be like these people? Are these the people who I admire, who I respect, who I want to live my life in the same way as? And if the answer is no, then it's up to you to seek out better mentors, better leaders who you can actually follow. This is something that has really helped me in my life. And it's not a criticism against anyone in my life at all. But for me, things that I wanted to do in my life were different than the people I grew up with, the people I was around. And so I had to find new mentors, such as Earl Nightingale and other people who I followed for many years. And I found that doing that changed my way of thinking and my belief in myself, because I was no longer just following followers who were actually following other people. You see this a lot in generational ideas. If a certain idea starts in one generation, say the grandparents' generation, it falls into the parents, and then it goes into the children. It keeps going through the generations. It kind of traps everyone at the same level, and it's only being followed because it was followed for generations. There's a great old metaphor for this of a family that are at Thanksgiving and they're cooking a roast, and the husband, the newly married husband, is watching his wife, and she cuts the ends off the roast and she puts it in the oven. And the husband says to her, "Why did you cut the ends off?" And she says, "Well, that's how you cook a roast. You cut the ends off and you put it in the oven." And he said, "Well, that doesn't make sense." She said, "Well, that's how my mother taught me to do it." So he says, "Right." So he goes over to the mother, his mother-in-law, and he says, "Hey, how come you cut the ends off the roast when you put it in the oven? Why do you do that?" And she said, "Well, that's the way you do it. That's the way I was taught." He said, "Who taught you?" She said, "Well, my mother taught me." Well, as would happen, her mother was in the house as well, the great grandmother, the matriarch of the family. So he went over to her, the grandma, and he said, "Hey, grandma, why do you cut the ends off the roast?" And she said, "Oh, that's interesting." She said, "Well, at the time when I grew up back in the Great Depression, the ovens were really, really small and the roast wouldn't fit in there. So we had to cut the ends off it and put it into the oven." And she said, "And that's why we did that." And he said, "Ah, interesting." And so that story demonstrates how we end up following the follower. His wife was doing the same thing that she was taught from her mother, and her mother was doing it because she was taught from the grandmother who did it for a different reason. It's not because that's the way you do it, it's because that's what was necessary at that point, but it kept going on through traditions. So that's a famous old allegorical story that I heard years ago, but it demonstrates this idea of following the follower, where we just get into this trap of doing what other people are doing because they're doing it and we think it's the right way. So I would encourage you to think about this in your life: is, are you actually following people who are and have what you want to be in your life? And if not, can you seek out different people who are more in line with what you would like to be in your life? And idea number 4, probably the most significant idea that Earl Nightingale is known for, and it's part of his program, The Strangest Secret, which is the famous one that I mentioned in the beginning that was the first gold record. He spent, I think it was 25 years searching for this secret, reading different books, asking everyone he could, looking at people who were successful, trying to figure it out, trying to answer this question of, why do some people succeed while others fail? And what he finally came up with was this phrase, that we become what we think about. We become what we think about. And this is something that is echoed through the whole Strangest Secret program. If you get a chance, look it up. It's on YouTube. There's hundreds of copies of it. We become what we think about in life. It is so incredibly true, my friend. If you think about your life now, as it is today, it's created by the thoughts that you've had over the past year, 5 years, 10 years of your life. Whatever you have thought about, whatever you have believed, whatever you have conceived, that's what you have achieved in your life, to use Napoleon Hill's famous statement. If you think something is going to be true, then it tends to come true. We are self-fulfilling prophecy machines. And this is good, and it's also bad depending on how you think. So whatever it is in your life that you are hoping to become or to do or to have, you have to first believe it. You have to first think it for it to become part of your reality. And if you don't think it's possible, then you won't achieve it. That's just how it works. So this idea of we become what we think about is something that I have noticed. And if I backtrack in my life a couple of years, generally speaking, the life that I'm living now is one that I was thinking about for many years. And I can prove this because a couple of weeks ago, Lauren and I got married. For years and years, I thought about meeting the right person in my life. And I believed that that person was out there. I knew I would meet her eventually if I just kept persisting. And I kept trying. I kept dating. I kept meeting people. I kept putting myself out there. I believed that I would meet her. I didn't give up. And at the age of 45, I met, well, 43 actually, I met the love of my life. And at 45, we're married. So that's an example of me becoming what I thought about, is married to the most amazing person and partner for me in the world, and for her as well. I wanted to buy a home, and Lauren and I both had that same goal for many years separately. And when we met, it aligned, and here we are living now in our own home, because this is something that we both thought about, planned for, had a goal for. There's a lot of different things like that. My speaking career, my traveling around the world, all these different things. I'm not saying these things to try and brag and say, look how amazing I am. I'm saying these are all things that I conceived, I thought about for many years before they became reality. Did they all come easily? Of course not. Some of them were a real struggle. Some of them I'm still working on, like my goal for the World Championship of Public Speaking. That is an idea in my head that I will become a world champion of public speaking. It hasn't happened yet, but it will, because I keep thinking about it. I keep surrounding myself with people who have achieved it, and I know it's possible for me just as it is for them. So, my friend, whatever it is in your life that you would like for yourself, that you desire, I would say think about it a lot. Think about how you could achieve it, what you need to do differently. Follow and get around people who have and are what you want to be. And that will change how you think, and that will change what you become, because we will become what we think about. So there you have it, my friends. These are my life lessons from Earl Nightingale. They have been profound and significant in my life. Let me repeat them for you very quickly. Number 1 is that success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal. There's my little thumbs up. It always does that for some reason. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal. Number 2 is service and rewards. Are you putting in enough service compared to the rewards you're getting? If you're not, then you need to put in more service to get the rewards that you want. Number 3 is following the follower instead of following people who are and have what you want to be. If you're following people just around you, you're going to get the same results. And finally, we become what we think about. If you want something in your life, you have to think differently to get different results. I hope that these ideas have been insightful for you. As I said in the beginning, Earl Nightingale has been an incredible mentor to me, even though I never met the man because he passed away before I had the chance to. He was actually alive at the same time for me as me for several years, but I was obviously way too young and didn't know anything about him. But I never had the chance to meet him in person. But in a way, everything that I do as a speaker and a writer and on video these days is a legacy to kind of further what he did. The fact that he helped me so profoundly, I hope that in some ways I can do a version of that for other people. If I can share simple little ideas, whether they're from people like him or other people that I learn from, and they impact people in the same way, that to me is part of the legacy that I'm carrying on for him. And I wanted to do one more little show and tell for you that is really nerdy and cool for me. But a couple of years ago, I treated myself and I bought a first edition of his book. This is Earl Nightingale, if you can see it there. And it is a signed copy. It wasn't signed for me. Someone else got it. And it says, Best Wishes, Earl Nightingale. So he signed this copy and I bought it. It was $80 on eBay to buy this first edition signed copy. And this book is very profound. It's actually most of his radio shows that he did for many years, all in written format. So amazing. And I've read that book several times and it's one of my favorite things. So there you go. A little bit of nerdy show and tell to finish. My friends, today is going to be a short episode, but I'm excited to be back either next week or the week after. I think next week, because the week after that will be Thanksgiving. I hope that these ideas have been useful and insightful for you. As I said in the beginning, I would really encourage you to check out some of Earl Nightingale's writings and recordings. There's a ton of them for free on YouTube. You can also purchase them for a couple of dollars. They're quite inexpensive these days, but the ideas are dense and then they're very worthwhile to listen to. So, Earl, I know you can't hear this right now, but if you can somehow, sir, I greatly appreciate your legacy, and I hope to be part of carrying that on in some way and even doing this today. Hopefully I'm doing that. So there we go, my friends. That is my life lessons from Earl Nightingale. All right. We are finishing up for today. It's great to see a couple of you there on Instagram. Hello, my friends, and on YouTube as well. We've got a little crew here. This is great. I am still progressing with some other tasks and projects in my life. One of them that I mentioned last week is that I'm working on a draft idea for a book that I'm writing. It's going to be based on the TEDx talk that I did several years ago. I've had it in my head for several years and have been encouraged by a lot of people to write it into book format. So I'm working on that in the background, as well as different ideas for my YouTube channel and some other projects that I'm working on as well, which are kind of fun. So there's a lot of things coming up, and I'm looking forward to sharing them with you in the coming months. But for now, it's a pleasure as always to be here. I love doing these most weeks. I try to do them at least 3 times a month, do a self-improvement episode. But yes, thank you for being here. I appreciate you all. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below. I love to read them all. If you have any questions about Earl Nightingale, reach out to me. I'd love to share some of his resources with you. So good to have you all here. So thank you for watching. And as I always say, thank you for improving yourself. See you next time.